Ladies and gentlemen, Pat Thompson.
Thank you. It's great to be back here. I love speaking at the Lake Harriet Spiritual Community. And so today's topic is about conscious commitment. Those of you who came to hear about conscious commitment know that that's what my topic will be. And so as I was puzzling through this when I first started to make notes, I thought, I don't know a lot of people that have trouble making conscious commitments. But I do know a lot of people who make conscious commitments and then find themselves unable to carry them out because of their unconscious beliefs. So I'm going to kind of delve into the unconscious part of commitment and talk about why we may have trouble making and keeping commitments. Has anybody here ever made a commitment and not been able to keep it? And so what are some of the reasons that you might have for not being able to keep a commitment? Just throw some stuff out.
Fear.
Fear, okay. Fear, what else? Time. What else? Stuff gets in the way, right? How many of you found that as soon as you make a commitment to something, something else will come up that gets in the way of your commitment, and then you have to sort of choose between your commitment and the thing that just came up, right? And sometimes it's an important thing that came up, like somebody in your family gets sick or something like that. So the first thing that I will tell you about making a commitment is that when you make a commitment, your unconscious self says, I'm going to show you everything that you're carrying that's going to prevent you from achieving that commitment, for the purpose of you to become aware of what's in your unconscious, and then you can change it. So the way that the body and the subconscious, so let's look at the conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious.
I already have it up.
The conscious is like your computer screen. That's what you're working on when you're working on your computer screen, right? Your subconscious is your apps. Those are all the things that you go to do other chores. So your subconscious is also the thing that you kind of store short-term memory in, and that's what drives when you're on the road and you're thinking deeply about something and you realize you've just gone 20 miles and you have no idea the condition of the roads or what the traffic was like because you're on autopilot, right? That's your subconscious. The unconscious is the place where we store trauma or things that we really choose not to remember. And so how then do we understand what is in our unconscious? And that's one of the great things about commitment, is commitment, as soon as you make a commitment, everything that's in the way of that will show up. And so when I work with clients, I always schedule our sessions for 2 weeks, because each week some commitment is made, and then it takes like a week for that to show up, and then it takes like a week for them to wallow through that, and then by the time they get in for their next session, we have a pretty good idea about what's in the way, what's up for healing, and what can be changed. So, the thing about the unconscious is, I've made a list of bullet points here. It runs the body and fights for survival, okay? So it's the part of you that goes into effect when you feel any sort of threat. That unconscious is immediately looking to find out how to get you out of there, or how to get you to safety, or how to prevent any harm. It's like a 7-year-old child. The unconscious likes to serve, it needs very clear direction, and it takes your instructions very literally. Do you need a handout, sir? I think, are there any more handouts? That's my boyfriend. So one of the classes I teach is conscious language, and part of why language is so critically important is that your unconscious is absolutely tuned to the words that you're saying. So how many times have you said, I'm broke? How many times have you said, I'm fat? How many times have you said, I'm lazy? Your unconscious goes, okay, all right, we'll be broke, we'll be fat, we'll be lazy, okay. So you have to, anytime you use the word I am, think about what you're saying. Really be clear what you're saying after that, because that I am is a flag to your unconscious to pay attention. Because whatever comes after that, your unconscious will say okay to. And that's why in conscious language, the first thing you change is I am. So rather than say, I'm broke, what could you say instead?
I am wealthy.
I am wealthy, exactly.
I'm working hard to change that.
Pardon me?
I'm working hard to change that.
And again, how would a 7-year-old respond to that statement? I'm working hard to change that. Would a 7-year-old get that? No. So remember, this says 7-year-old, but actually what my conscious language teacher said, it's more like a 3-year-old. So if you think about how you have to speak to a 3-year-old and the kind of messages that you have to give to a 3-year-old for them to understand what you're saying, and then you remember the repetition that a 3-year-old has to have, right? You can't just tell a 3-year-old no once. How many times do you have to say no to a 3-year-old before they stop doing that thing? Sometimes 1,000. And so remember that your unconscious is, repetition will change your patterns. It'll change your unconscious beliefs. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. The unconscious communicates through emotions and symbols. How many of you pick things up when you're driving and you're like, oh my God, look at that, look at that, look at that, look at that, and they're all the same? How many of you have had that experience where you're driving or you're walking and you get messages from the world around you, right? That's one of the ways that your unconscious is trying to get your attention. So pay attention, but more quickly is emotion. Emotion is probably, it's the language of the unconscious. And so my work has really been to explore what the unconscious landscape looks like and how it works. And what I would say over the 20 years I've been doing it is that emotion is it's a language in and of itself that speaks through the body. And if you don't get it, then the body will kick in by causing you pain or illness. And so a lot of times when I'm sitting at a stoplight and I'll have like a pain in my hip or something, and I'll go, oh, that's on my right side, that's my masculine side, that's my hip. The hip is where my foundation of my life sits. What's going on with the foundation of my life in my masculine side, which is my side is out doing. And within the 30 seconds that it takes for the light to change, I have a message from my unconscious and the pain goes away. So your body's very fluid in terms of the information that it gives to you and how quickly you receive it. And when you get the information that the body's giving you, it will stop hurting. What else? The unconscious stores and organizes memories, okay, and not always accurately, as many of us have found. That sometimes I grew up in a family of 8 kids, and I remember the first time as an adult when we all got together and we were sharing a story about the same event, and there was 8 different stories, and I was like, wait, what? Were we all in the same place? Were we all experiencing the same thing? And clearly we were not. We were all, so that was my first real idea that everybody really lives in their own reality, and we just have these places where we meet and agree on reality. Okay, unconscious does not process negatives. So that's another really good thing to know about language is when you say, I would like to be rich, not poor, your unconscious just remembers poor because it doesn't process the not. So we have a habit in English of ending a sentence with our not. Like, I look at protest signs all the time, and that's the first thing I see. Make love, not war. And the unconscious goes, war, right? So if you're a sign maker, put the thing, either leave the negative off altogether and just write make love, or you could say, not war, make love. You switch it around. So the last thing that's on the screen of your brain is what your unconscious will pick up and carry with it. And finally, makes associations and learns quickly. Your unconscious is about survival. So it's always monitoring what's happening around you. It's always monitoring the people that are coming in the room. It's monitoring the environment of the room. It's monitoring what's happening. And then it processes that information very quickly based on your past experiences. And if something is happening in the room that you've had a bad experience with or a trauma with, and that trauma is in that unconscious, you're going to have a trigger. Okay, that's what I call a trigger. So a trigger is an unconscious reaction to something that's happening around you that doesn't have any thought to it. It's just an emotional surge or a feeling. How many people have ever had a trigger? Like 20 times a day sometimes. So triggers are great because they tell you you are having a response to something that may or may not be real anymore and may be able to be changed. And that's important when you're thinking about conscious commitment, because when you make a commitment, everything that's in the way will show up. And so it'll show up with a trigger. So if you have a trigger, so if you make a commitment and then the trigger comes up, you can say, what is that trigger about? I'm going to get to that in a minute. We're going to walk through a little exercise. And I do like people to volunteer for stuff, and if you don't volunteer, I just call on you. Okay, so how do we move something from the unconscious to the conscious mind? Because that's really the thing. If you're looking to live a conscious life and make conscious commitments and be conscious in all the things that you do, somehow you have to have access to those parts of yourself that are deeply buried in your unconscious, right? And so how would you make what's unconscious conscious? Does anybody have any ideas? Come on, this is the Lake Harriet Spiritual Center. You guys have ideas.
Ask yourself how it shows up in your body.
Ask yourself how it shows up in your body. Great. Okay. What else? You had something to say?
Awareness.
Awareness.
You know, going in, it's, you know, something's going to trigger us going on.
Okay. Anything else? Yes.
Write on a 4x6 card and keep reminding yourself.
Write it on a 4x6 card and keep reminding yourself about it. That's good. Anybody else? Yes.
Hypnosis kind of pull those things out of the subconscious.
Okay, hypnosis to pull that stuff out. Anything else? Meditation. Meditation. Excellent. That's a good one. Yep. Yoga. Yoga's really good too, which is a form of meditation. I think one of the things I love about yoga is that it really connects the unconscious and the body to your conscious mind. So if you can, the thing about trauma is that it lives physically in your body. And what I found with yoga is that as you move through becoming more flexible and you become more conscious of areas of your body that you normally aren't aware of, whatever trauma might be living in that muscle or that tissue or that joint will start coming to the surface. And so the combination of focusing on your body, breath, and the movements can really bring deeply buried ideas and beliefs to the surface, which you then can work out. When I first started doing yoga, about halfway through my second class, I found myself breaking into tears in the middle of class and just sobbing. And so my yoga teacher was like, oh, you know, let's put you over here in a restorative position and just stay in the corner and be quiet. And that wasn't really working for me because I wanted to, you know, move through that. So I hired a yoga teacher to come to my house, and then while she was having me go through the movements, I would just sob and cry. And that went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then finally, that all cleared out, and I had like these, this sort of download of information about what all of that was about, what all of those things that were now coming out from being very deeply in my body were about. And I had to journal about them, and I got to work with them, and I got to make some different choices about my beliefs. So yoga and meditation are really fabulous ways of bringing yourself into your own unconscious and then making some changes. All right. So I'm going to give you some simple steps for how to move something from the unconscious to the conscious. And I'd love if somebody would be willing to come up here and play with me and let themselves be walked through this. First, I'll give you the steps. So the first thing that you can do to find something that's unconscious in you that is looking for change is watch for your repeating patterns. Every time I do this, this happens. So I'm not doing this anymore. Okay? How many people have had that experience? Millions of times for me. And so repeating, if you're not able to identify a repeating pattern in yourself, look at repeating patterns in your family. Because if you have family patterns, there's a good chance that you're part of that, and that's another way to see what an unconscious belief that's moving through the family. What is a repeating pattern? You know, we have repeating patterns that are good for us, and we have repeating patterns that are bad for us. So let me be a little more specific about that. If you have ways of reacting that are unconscious and that are the same every time you're triggered, that's a repeating pattern that needs some change, okay? Can anybody think of that in their own life? Can anybody think of that, having a repeating pattern that shows up all the time when a certain thing happens? Okay, good. How about when you're home for the holidays? How many people have those repeating patterns that show up? Yeah. And so sometimes those things are so painful for people that they just avoid them. I'd like to encourage you to explore those patterns because that's where you're going to find the most return on your investment. You're going to get the most back from making those changes. The more of an emotional response you have to something, the more energy you have locked up there and the bigger the return will be for you. All right. When you have a trigger like that, one of the things that's happening is that there's a belief system that's conflicting with what you are trying to commit to. The change that you're trying to make in your life or the direction that you're trying to take in your life is going to be influenced by these deeply buried belief systems. And most belief systems, they say, are embedded by the time you're 5 years old. How conscious are you from birth to 5? You know, are you conscious enough to say, yes, I choose to believe this, I choose to believe this, I choose to believe that, you know, this is what relationships look like, I choose to believe that this is how the world works? No, you spend most of your childhood learning how the world works. So those beliefs that get buried in those first 5 years are sometimes the hardest to find because we're not conscious of them, we're not conscious of taking them in, and we're not conscious of them being behind our actions, and yet they are driving about 80% of our actions. So if we don't know them and we don't know how to get to them, it's going to be awfully hard to change them. So when I have a trigger, the first thing I do is ask myself how I'm feeling. And if it's fear, then I talk myself through it. So sometimes if it's a lot of fear, I literally have to let my body shake and convulse for a few minutes before I can get to the talking part. So I just let myself have that experience of shaking. That's how fear is leaving the body. Then I say, what is the fear about? Well, I feel fear about this. And one of the things I've learned is I never say I am afraid, I am scared. I stopped that when I learned how the unconscious was like, okay, scared, okay, scared, okay. I started saying I feel fear instead of I am scared. I feel fear. So then I would say, where's the fear coming from? Well, I feel this, and I feel that, and I feel this. And so I would walk those fears backwards to find out what was the belief behind them. And then I would eventually come to some sort of really major belief system like, people who love you will hurt you. And I would say, oh, I could see where you got that as a child, but you're not a child anymore. Now you're an adult and you can make a different choice about that. That doesn't have to be true anymore. And so then belief systems have a lot of energy because they kept you safe this whole time. So they will try to justify their existence. So that belief might say to me, well, no, I'm going to prove to you that people who love you will hurt you. And then you maybe have an experience with somebody in your family where your feelings get hurt and the belief system says sort of behind your back, see, it's true, it's valid, you don't want to get rid of me, I'm taking care of you. So you have to be gentle with your belief systems, and you also have to give them the respect of keeping you safe for as long as it has. But you also, this is how I learned. One time I had a friend and we said, let's do a ritual about belief systems. So we built this big plug, and then we built a socket, and then we made a list of all the belief systems that we were going to change. So we're like, we're unplugging from this belief system, and we're plugging into this belief system. Well, we did like 20 in a day. Do not do that. My life was chaos for like 2 years. Because all those belief systems were up going, okay, well, I'm going to prove to you that I'm still valid. And so I was constantly trying to juggle what belief system is this and what's happening. Instead, now I've learned to say to a belief system, what would you like to evolve into? Thank you for taking care of me for the first however many years of my life, for protecting me and keeping me safe. What would you like someone who loves you will hurt you to evolve into? What would you as a belief system like to evolve into? And then the belief system goes, oh, you know, maybe I could evolve into love heals everything. It's like, all right, good, love heals everything. All right, let's go love. Let's go out and love. And you may get tested more than once. Maybe it depends on how deeply the belief system is buried and how big it is and how many times in your life you've fed it that it was right that people who love you will hurt you. Do you all understand where I'm going with this? Any questions so far? Yes, Tom.
When you said that about not make love, not war, why does the unconscious not hear the word not, or it hears it down below but doesn't hear it on the top?
It doesn't, it's not that it doesn't, first of all, it doesn't hear negatives. So those words aren't even, if you take all the negatives out, that's what it hears. And the last thing on your screen, the last thing in the sentence, is what the unconscious focuses on. It's got, remember, it's like a 3-year-old. You don't give long sentences to a 3-year-old, right? You give them very short, succinct directions. It's the same thing with your unconscious. And you don't want to give your unconscious or your 3-year-old the nots. Don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. We do that, don't we? We say that to our kids a lot, don't we? Don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And yet what the unconscious and what the children really need is do this, do this. Now kids will always say why, and that's good because it's important for us to know why we're asking them to do something and to have a good logical explanation in case we need it. Any other questions? All right. Is there anybody that would be brave enough to come up and sort of walk through maybe a belief system? Come on up. What's your name?
Laura.
Laura, nice to meet you. Thank you for being so brave. All right, so let's talk about a trigger that you might have, something that you're aware of that happens when you feel unsafe or uncomfortable. Can you think of something offhand?
Fear of abandonment.
Fear of abandonment, okay. Has there been a time or times in your life where you have actually been abandoned?
Yes.
Okay, so that fear, that belief system is justified, right? The fear of being abandoned is a belief system that says, if you care about, so what would the belief system be? If you love somebody, or if somebody else is responsible for you, or how does that work? How does the abandonment part of it work?
For me, it's probably a belief that you are going to disappear, you're not going to be there. And it affects whether or not I love you the level to which I love.
I see, okay, so your belief system is, don't put too much on the table because they're gonna leave at some point. Would that be it? All right, so there we go. So now you all see how we got to there? How we got to the belief system? Any questions about that part? Okay, so let's thank that belief system for getting you this far in your life safely.
Thank you for getting me safely to where I am.
And now ask that belief system what it would like to evolve into.
What would you like to evolve into?
Okay, now I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and just sort of scan your body and just let whatever comes to you come, and you take as much time as you need.
It's like light in my eyes and a sense of the awareness of my,
So she says she's feeling a light in her eyes and some awareness in her gut. Okay, the light is gone.
it's a sense of curiosity.
Okay, her belief system is curious about this. Belief systems don't know that they get to evolve.
Question rising is, does this have to be?
Does what have to be?
The belief about abandonment?
Okay, so now the belief system is actually questioning itself. What's coming up for her is, does this belief have to be this way? What would it rather be?
It would rather be open, accepting, curious, questioning. Accepting.
Okay. So now her belief system has opened itself up and said, I'm willing to change at this point. So now we're going to ask your conscious mind to make a new belief system, to make a commitment, a statement that you can commit to that will help that belief system become something else. And so we may have to walk through this a little bit. This is a language thing as well. So before it was, don't put too much of yourself out because you will get left behind. Okay, that's before. So now, what would be a different and more open and more accepting and freer belief system?
I'm willing to explore with you wherever this takes us.
All right, so let's do a commitment statement. I agree, or I will, or I believe.
I accept change. I will be there with you.
Say it again.
I will be there with you.
Say that again.
I will be there with you.
Say that again.
I will be there with you.
Say that again.
I will be there with you.
What's going on in your body?
There's a level of relaxation.
Excellent, excellent. Can you see how her whole demeanor just changed? So now her belief system has something to look forward to, and it no longer has to hold this fear that she's going to be abandoned, and instead, it knows that she's strong enough to survive even if she does get abandoned, and yet, it doesn't have to believe that she will anymore. It can believe that people will stay with her. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Come on, you guys. That was really fun. Come on up, Tom. This is my friend Tom. Old film business buddy. All right. How are you doing? Okay.
Scared. I feel scared.
Yes, yes. It is frightening to get up and go through a process like this in front of a bunch of people.
I'd say it's frightening all by myself.
Okay, well, good. Then we're going to support you so that you will give you some courage for this today. So, okay. So what's a trigger that you know you have? how does the trigger show up when you say commitment and disappointment? It sounds like those two things go hand in hand in this particular case.
I might talk myself out of a relationship because I'm going to get disappointed in screwed.
Okay, so let's give a name to that belief system. You pretty much already did, and
I don't understand the question.
so we're going to, the belief system is, there's no point in putting all of myself into the relationship because I'm going to be disappointed, right?
Yeah, I want more out of it.
Okay, I'm not going to get what I want out of it. Is that the belief system?
Yeah.
I'm not going to get what I want out of it. Okay, now, hello belief system. Let's thank that belief system for getting you this far.
Thank you for escorting me through the chaos so far, belief system.
All right. Now I'm going to have you close your eyes and ask that belief system what it would like to evolve to. And then you can take your time, pay attention to the sensations in your body. You're free to share those with us or not.
I'm shaking.
Okay, that's fear leaving the body. Anytime you're shaking, that's fear leaving the body. How many of you have ever been in a yoga pose where you start doing this, right? That's fear coming out of the body. I love that. I'll stay in there as long as I can when I have that happen.
Kind of breathing heavy, feeling
Okay.
emotional.
Okay, good. Feeling emotional. If you're feeling emotional, that's the language of the unconscious. And it gets emotional when it's real. When it's really true to your heart, that's when it gets emotional.
Tell me again the mission here, the task.
The task is, so now what would that belief system like to evolve into?
What would that belief system, what would I like that belief system to turn into, to evolve into?
What would the belief system like to evolve into? See the difference there?
Yeah, me and them is.
Well, it's your conscious mind saying, I'm going to impose something on my unconscious, and the unconscious is not very good at taking orders from the conscious. It'll listen to you, but it has a very bad habit of sabotaging.
What would my unconscious belief system like to be? Because it wants to be happy? Is that what this is here? I want to change this little thing.
So the belief system is that you're going to be disappointed in a relationship, right? What was the original belief system? Was that it? It feels like we went further than that, and I should have written it down. What was it?
It's not going to get what he wants.
You're not going to get what you desire. You're not going to get what you desire out of a relationship. So then, if that's the present belief system, then what would it like to evolve into that you can get what you desire in a relationship? Remember, these belief systems are the building blocks of your actions, okay? So if you're taking an action from a place of fear of not getting what you want, then you're always going to be in that path of not getting what you want. And so when you give the belief system an opportunity to say that it would like to be something better for you, instead of cutting that away or pushing it away or rejecting that part of yourself, you're literally inviting it to evolve with you.
Because it wants to serve us.
It wants to serve us, it does. Its job is to make sure that you are safe and protected. And so in the past, that might have been by taking you away from situations that felt threatening. At this time in our evolution as a species, it's important that we replace these belief systems so that they're moving us towards a higher vibration of life itself.
Now, in your description, you said safe and protected, and I would have thought happy. Now, is this all just semantics, or does they follow one another? Because that's what I would think to serving me, I would like that to serve me to be happy.
The unconscious is not really concerned with your happiness as much as it's concerned with your safety. It's your conscious mind that's concerned with happiness. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with our conscious mind. I mean, we need it. That's the part of us that makes decisions and makes commitments and, makes plans and goals. It's only going to be as good as this foundation of unconscious beliefs, though. So if the mind is saying, I want to be happy, and the unconscious is saying, yes, but that direction is going to just lead you to more unhappiness, so we're not even going to go there. The path to happiness for you is to be in a relationship where you're satisfied, right? And you're not. And there's disappointment doesn't ever enter into the thing, because what you will find is if you have a different belief system and you then are open to being in a relationship, the disappointment is often with ourselves. And it is a way that we are telling ourselves that we have these belief systems that are buried, that are not serving us. So my guess is that when the belief system evolves and you have something new to build on top of, disappointment will not be the thing. You'll still probably have conflict, you'll probably still have times where you get triggered, and you can work through that because you have a new belief system. So if happiness is part of what the new belief system is going to include, then what would that new belief system sound like?
My belief system needs to be, what's the correct way to...
We'll just walk through it, so just say whatever comes to you.
My belief system needs to feel trusting and accepting.
Trusting and accepting because... Take a deep breath. Take another one. Get some oxygen in there. Okay, there you go. Uh-huh, yep. But your posture just changed too, so.
I want my belief system to believe. I want my belief system to allow me to accept,
Okay, I'm gonna step in here and help you out. I trust and accept myself, and therefore I can trust and accept all of my relationships. Because you see, one of the things that I trust and accept myself, therefore I trust and accept all my relationships. I trust and accept myself.
Trust and accept myself, therefore I can trust and accept other relationships.
So thank you, Tom. That was very brave. And one of the things that this showed us is that a lot of times those belief systems and the things that we get triggered by are the things that we don't accept about ourselves. We have all known for 20-odd years that it's all the work has been about love yourself, trust yourself, work on yourself first, and the world will be changed, right? Those are the messages that have been coming through every spiritual community for eons. You start with the self. So the first thing is that if you have a belief system about relationships, look at the places of yourself that you have rejected. Look at the places in yourself that you have abandoned. Look at the places in yourself that you have cut off or don't accept, or someone told you at an early age was inappropriate, and so you got rid of that. When I first started doing shamanic work, I was working with my teacher one day, and I had a very traumatic childhood. So there was a lot of incidents in my childhood where I had fragmented personalities happening. And when I first started working with this woman, we were doing an exercise, and I had my eyes closed, and she was, I'm not even sure what she was saying, but I was walking down this long hallway, and it was like a hospital corridor, but it just went on forever. And there were the doors. And I opened a door, and I looked in, and hanging from the ceiling were thousands of cocoons. And in every one of those cocoons was a little girl, unconscious, twirling. And my guide for that journey said, those are all of your wounds, and they need to be woken up. And it was horrifying to me, and at the same time, it gave me such a clear path of where my work was going to take me, which was to continue to go back into the unconscious and find those traumatized pieces of myself and bring them out of the darkness and wake them up and let them become full participating parts of my life. Now, some of those parts of myself were a handful. And it was very hard for me to integrate them. Some of them took years to integrate because we didn't see eye to eye on stuff. The reason I'm telling you this is that when we have commitment issues, it's almost always starting with the commitment to the self. How many of you put your own commitments to yourself aside when someone asks for your help? That's one of the first things that you can do, is keep your word to yourself first. Any commitment you make to yourself becomes the priority. And remember what I said, as soon as you make a commitment, especially to yourself, everything will show up to see. It's almost like you're testing yourself. Am I really believing this? Am I really going to do this? So you make a commitment. You're like, I'm going to go to the gym 3 days a week. I'm going to go to that 9:45 class 3 days a week. And then Monday morning shows up and somebody calls and says, I really need you to come into work early. What are you going to do? If you keep your commitment, if you keep your word to yourself, what you will find is that your life will get easier and easier and easier. Because the parts of yourself that are angry, that you don't keep a commitment to yourself, are going to start showing up as a community. And suddenly you have this force of energy within you, all these different parts of yourself that are all like, yeah, we'll go to the gym, and then we'll go to work, and then we'll get out of work early because we'll be done, and then we're going to go hang out with these people. And so keep your word to yourself first, and everything else will fall into place. Any questions? Yes, Tom?
Will your book instruct to get to that, with the unconscious, or techniques to sort of safe and be there?
Yes, my book, I'm finishing a book of 18 years I've been working on it. I'm on my last chapter. And in the book, it's a primer to moving through the unconscious, and I introduce you to your 5 distinct personality types, which all have a different job in your life. What happens when they fragment, and then how do you put yourself back together, and how do you balance all of that out? So yes, that will be my goal in making, and why it's taking me 18 years, is I needed to write a book for 3-year-olds about the unconscious. And so it's taken me a long time, and I've had to learn how to get super succinct with my language. So we're just about ready to do the offertory. So are there any questions? Yes?
It feels inauthentic to thank the part of the self that's been self-sabotaging and causing, patterns of behavior that are so self-destructive. What's the point of, and I know there's a point to it, but it's hard to, I feel very conflicted.
Well, that's a great question. Did everybody hear that? She said it feels inauthentic to thank the part of herself that's been sabotaging her, to thank it for its, for what it's done in her life, and that it's kind of tears you, pulls you in two directions. Two things that I would say is, one, that is a part of yourself. So if you're not accepting it and loving it, then it is going to continue to sabotage you. Okay, so that's part of how we fragment, is that we label that part of us as a self-saboteur, and we don't want anything to do with it, and we certainly don't want to thank it. But here's the other thing. That belief system only came into effect because it needed to protect you from something at a time when you didn't have a conscious ability to take different steps. So that belief system is there to protect you from something. And maybe that something is many, many years in the past. That's why it's important for us to upgrade those belief systems and say, thank you for taking care of me. What would you like to upgrade to?
But the belief system is that I'm unlovable.
Yes.
So in what way can that protect me?
It can keep you from opening yourself up to people who maybe would treat you as you were unlovable. In other words, it might have kept you away from relationships that would have harmed you further.
It caused me to get into relationships to prove to myself that I was unlovable. So I see it now clearly as a very destructive pattern that in no way served me. But I like what you said, the first one, because that makes sense, because that is a part of myself that I need to love.
There you go. That is. See, maybe that's what it is, simply, is that if you don't believe that all parts of you are lovable, why would anybody else?
Right.
Yes.
Can I answer that?
Yes.
Pattern may have made perfect sense when you were 3 or 4 or 7 at that level. So it was doing exactly what was best for you then. But you have grown. It's kind of stayed. You just need to.
Do I have any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, okay, so we had good examples on people's belief systems on themselves, and I know it all comes back to us, but I actually have a current one. It's like, what do you do when a belief system about someone else? Like, right now.
I'm going to stop you right there. You cannot do anything about other people's belief systems. Okay, it's not your job and it's out of your venue. You cannot influence, the only way you can influence other people's belief systems is how you behave personally. Right? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I kind of already do, but I want to just bring it up just because I'm sure people have belief systems about other people, like, they're lazy and never really.
Oh, well, I see what you're saying. If
Yeah.
you have a belief system about your brother being lazy, find it in yourself.
Yeah.
Find it in yourself and love it, and then it'll just disappear. I've had miraculous experiences in my relationships where when I found the thing that I was projecting or that was being reflected, when I changed it myself, it was like instantly gone. Like there was no conflict with that person ever again. So, all right, we really do have to do the offertory. If there's time at the end when we circle up, I'll take maybe another question or two.
Thank you so much.
So we can start by holding hands. We're actually going to drop our hands. So when you need to make sure you're close enough to the other person that you can. Okay, so we're going to drop our hands. You're going to put your left palm up, and that stays right where it is. With your right hand, you're going to scan the person on your right over their palm until you feel an energetic, you need to move your hand over here more. Thank you. Until you feel an energetic, right there. Make sure your left hand is close enough to the person on your left so they can actually get to it. Can you all feel that? All right, so you take energy in through the left side of the body and you send it out on the right side of the body. So we're gonna just watch this energy go around the room, and as it moves through from your left hand, it'll go into your heart. Give it just a little bit of love energy and send it out your right hand around the circle, and then watch it travel around and watch all the other heart energy being included in there. And we've got you in this circle too up there, so. And so as it's going around, it's building up pure, beautiful love. And we're all contributing. Some of you may feel your hands really tingling now, right? All right, so now that we've built up this nice force field, we're going to take an inhale, and on the exhale, you're going to bring your hands together as though you're holding a basketball. Or a soccer ball, or a baseball, but you're going to feel that same kind of energy in the palms of your hand. So get your energy ball together, right? And have that right in front of your heart, so it's still getting that heart energy. And then what we're going to do is in the center of the room, we're going to inhale, and on the exhale, we're going to throw that ball where you think it most needs to go today. That could be to somebody you know that's struggling. It could be to the earth or the animals, or it could be to some oil spill, or wherever you think this energy needs to go, that's where you'll send it. So we'll take a big inhale, and on the exhale, excellent. Thank you all very much for a great idea.